Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, New Relic Infrastructure Feature Updates for April 2017. Speaking today, we have Aaron Newcomb, Product Marketing Manager, and Matt Wagner, Lead Software Engineer for New Relic's Infrastructure product. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items I want to go over. First, today's webinar will be recorded, and a recording will be sent to you shortly after the presentation. And there will also be a live Q&A session after the presentation. So please submit any questions that you might have during the webinar into the GoToWebinar control panel. Last, we'll also send out a brief survey at the end of the presentation, so please take the time to give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Now, I'll hand it off to Aaron Newcomb, and I'll have him take it away.
All right, thanks a lot. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. I am Aaron Newcomb, and as we already talked about, I'm Product Marketing Manager for Infrastructure. We've got some really great updates to tell you about today. And I'm joined today by Matt. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Matt Wagner. I'm one of the lead software engineers for the Infrastructure product. I actually joined with the Optimatic team, and as Infrastructure is kind of a continuation of that product. Happy to be still working on it today.
Yeah, and I am thrilled because there's so many great software engineers here at New Relic. And Matt is just one of them. And I want to reiterate, we are going to be taking questions at the end. And just to mix things up a little bit, Matt doesn't know I'm going to do this, but let's play a little stump the chump. So as you're listening, you can come up with a question that either I or Matt can't answer about our current product from a technical aspect. In today's, as we do the Q&A, I will personally send you a little gift card for Starbucks. So keep that in mind, be listening, and be asking some great questions. Here's what we're going to go over today. So we're going to be just doing a real brief overview of what infrastructure is, just in case there's some folks out there who haven't used the product or haven't seen the product before. Then we're going to be talking about the new features, and Matt is going to be demonstrating those features for you. And we'll also tell you where to get more information about if you want to follow up on a particular detail that you hear about on the call. And then, like I said, we'll take time for Q&A. So let's jump right into it. So New Relic Infrastructure is one of our newest products. It is our newest products. It's also our fastest growing product since we released it last November. We've seen a lot of adoption over this, and it's really just one part of our actual platform. So of course, we have other products. You may be familiar with our APM product, but we also have products that support mobile, browser, doing things like synthetics. We can also roll up and do some really cool dashboards. We might even have time to show you a little bit about that today in our Insights product. But it's really about, for us at New Relic, it's about our entire platform and not just about one product. So as you get used to New Relic Infrastructure and start to use some of the features, especially some of the alerts that we're going to be talking about today, you'll see that a lot of that is consistent across all the platforms and really gives you a consistent view of your entire ecosystem. So New Relic Infrastructure in and of itself really helps our customers do things like when they're deploying their infrastructure, it gives them a really nice view of what's changing over time. So they can go back and fix problems that might have cropped up. It also gives them the ability to scale across on-premise, cloud, containers, wherever you happen to be running. We can actually give you a consistent view across all of those different environments. And it also gives you the ability to really get a view, not just of your infrastructure and your hosts, but of an entire picture of your applications, what's going on as someone opens up your app on their mobile device, all the way down through the CPU memory and processes that are running on your host. So it really plugs into everything else and gives you an overall picture of the health of your digital experience that you're providing for your customers. So that's all we're going to say about infrastructure, but you always can go back and get more information. We have a lot of webinars that are archived that you can go back and listen to. So again, as I said, if you're new to this, if you haven't actually used the product, or if you're not familiar with it, please make go take advantage of the resources that we offer. One that I would recommend is the Infrastructure 101 webinar that we've done, and you can find that at newrelic.com/infrastructure. It goes into a lot more detail about what the product does, what it looks like, and what the benefits are. All right, now to the meat of the presentation. let's talk a little bit about what the new features are. So this is really exciting. These new features are actually alerts that you can set up. And the one that comes to mind first that we really want to talk about is host not reporting, which actually allows you to see when we're not getting communication from your host. It allows you to set up an alert to trigger on that event and actually get notified if something happens, if something's going on in your infrastructure. Maybe you were expecting it, maybe you weren't, and you need to go take a look at that and see what's going on. So that's host not reporting. The second one is process running. So maybe you want to take a look at if there are too many processes of a certain type running on a system or too few, less than you expected, for example, you can actually get an alert based on that for a given set of hosts or for all your hosts. It's up to you. And the last one is memory percentage. So this allows you, gives you the ability to actually set a threshold, a memory percentage threshold, where you might want to get notified if you're using too much memory. A lot of times our customers are set up in diverse environments on diverse hosts, and they have a particular memory threshold that they want to be alerted on as opposed to a certain amount of memory used. And so this new alert gives you the ability to do just that. It can tell you when you're hitting 80% or 90% of available memory, or perhaps even, I guess you could go the other way. We'll ask Matt in a minute and figure out if we can also look at using not enough memory, because that means maybe you've deployed too many hosts and you need to cut back a little bit and potentially save a little bit of money in the process. So those are the three new alerts that we want to talk about today. And for more detail, we're going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to give us a look at exactly what this looks like and how to enable these new alerts.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so the first one I'll talk about is host not reporting. And just, this is kind of what it looks like if I go in the UI. So this is an alert that lets me know when an agent has stopped sending us data. And, obviously that can mean either the agent stopped running or the host itself stopped running. We only have an agent, so we don't necessarily know the difference. But when we stop hearing from an agent, we will let you know if you set up one of these alerts. So let me jump into the configuration of the alert real quick before I talk about what actually happens when it goes offline. So if I jump over to my alert configuration page, here's the alert that I've previously set up. And this is going to let me know when any of my Cassandra servers goes offline. Now, there's a couple important things I should point out about alerting in general before we talk about host not reporting specifically. The first is that I can filter this to some set of hosts using any metadata that's available to infrastructure. And just as a quick recap, metadata could include things like which instance type it is in EC2. It can include some part of its host name or all of the host name. It can include applications that we detect are running on it through New Relic APM if you're using both products. But you can also use custom tags or custom attributes in the agent configuration. So we, for example, attach a role tag to all of our servers to indicate what cluster they're part of. And so I filtered this to just nodes that are in the Cassandra cluster. Now, I should also point out that this is dynamic in that it'll detect new hosts that show up. So what this means is any host that comes online and ends up having the Cassandra 22 tag will automatically be included as part of this alert. And so I don't have to worry about making REST calls or something like that to manually add this individual host that I'm adding to the condition that I want it to be covered by. So yeah, what this alert is doing is watching for any hosts that have the Cassandra 22 role tag on them to go offline. And as it turns out, that's happened. And I can set a threshold. I can say, let me know if it's been offline for 5 minutes, which is our minimum, because we want some amount of buffer time to just, if you have a temporary network blip or something like that, we don't want to fire off too many false positives. So if it's been offline for 5 minutes up to an hour, I can control that threshold. And yeah, this is what it looks like. So I can see the agent got disconnected at 9:43 this morning, and then under a minute later, it sent me that notification that the agent stopped reporting. This alert happened to send a notification over Slack, but as with any New Relic alerts, you can have it send emails. You can use a webhook. There's a variety of other notification preferences that are available. You can also have it go to PagerDuty if you're using that. I'm sure I'm missing some. But yeah, when you get that, if you go into New Relic Infrastructure, you'll see where it shows up in the event feed that the host went offline. And so let's suppose there's one of two scenarios here. The first is that this host actually went offline and I need to bring it back online because it wasn't supposed to go offline. Maybe there's some problem. So I can log into the host and fix that. And as soon as the agent starts reporting again, the violation will close itself and everything will go back to green. The other scenario, which can happen from time to time, is you're actually decommissioning a host and you want it to go offline. If you happen to have an alert that's covering that cluster, you have basically two options. You can temporarily disable the alert, or when the alert happens, you can go into alerts. And if I click into this incident, I can just manually close the violation and say that's okay. I know this host went offline and it's not going to come back, and that's fine. So I'll go ahead and do that.
Cool. Hey, Matt, you said you said you could manipulate the threshold, the time when you get alerted. Are there absolute minimums or maximums?
Yeah, so what we allow here, and I can see if I put in here, the range is between 5 minutes and 60 minutes. And the 5 minutes is just to give us enough time to accurately detect if the host is offline rather than having some kind of quick, blip of availability on it. 60 minutes is just because if it's been offline for more than 60 minutes, yeah, I don't know. It seems like you want to know by then.
That seems reasonable. Great.
You can adjust this. So if you're doing maintenance and you want to restart a host or something like that, and it takes 5 minutes to do that maintenance, you might want to set this to something higher, like 10 minutes or something like that, just to give it enough time to come back online.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the next one I'll cover is process running alerts. So this type of alert condition allows you to detect basically when a certain number of processes are running. That's kind of a generic way of phrasing it. If you look at the configuration for this, there's a number of settings for this. And I guess I'll get to those in a second once I talk about filtering to processes. So basically, first you pick which host you want to cover. You can also have it cover all your hosts if you want to. But I can filter on any of the types of attributes that we detect for processes. So this can include anything from the actual command that's being run to, for containers, any labels that are on the containers for Docker containers. I can filter on the username. So perhaps I want to know when a certain user is running, a bunch of processes or a particular like security sensitive process or something like that. Any of those options are available to you to do whatever kind of filtering you might want to do on processes. In our case, since I'm sticking with Cassandra, I will just say that I want to make sure that there is a Cassandra process running on each of my Cassandra nodes. So what I can go down here and pick is say, I want to make sure that at least one Cassandra process is running on all of my Cassandra nodes, and taking these two filters into account, it's covering all of my Cassandra nodes and watching for processes called Cassandra. So, whoops, I picked the wrong one. I want to know when no processes are running. So what this will do is it'll watch basically the number of unique processes running that match that filter, which should normally be one. I assume there's not going to be, multiple Cassandra processes. Maybe if I wanted to watch for that, I could pick exactly one processes are running that match this filter. That would be another valid option if I want to make sure there's not, for example, two Cassandra processes. Maybe that causes a problem. But yeah, when it sees that there are, not one running anymore, it'll let me know after that's been the case for 5 minutes. You can flip these around. So maybe this doesn't make a whole lot of sense with Cassandra, but for something like an application server, there's a variety of application servers that use kind of a pool of running processes to balance which processes are responding to requests. So perhaps I might have it configured to use 8 processes in that pool. So I would want to know when there are fewer than 8 of my application server running on a machine. And this one's a little probably more rare, being alerted when there are more than a certain number of processes running. One example use case for this, and we've actually seen this here, is some cron job goes wild and spawns, over time, thousands and thousands of bash processes, something like that. So I could even have this monitor all processes on a machine. If I take the filter off, I could say, maybe it's absolutely insane for there to be more than 1,000 processes running on any given machine. And so I could set this filter, and it'll let me know whenever we see more than 1,000 processes for 5 minutes in a row on a machine. Something I should talk about as well is how we detect the number of processes. So essentially what we're watching, just to get technical for a second, what we're watching is the number of unique process IDs running that match the filter in every 1 minute window. And so think about how this impacts restarts. If I restart Cassandra, then there will be, within that 1 minute window where I restarted it, there would be 2 different process IDs for the Cassandra process. So that's why sometimes you might want to use, for example, no processes are running rather than exactly one process is running. It might get triggered when you don't want it to if you restart Cassandra. Now, the flip side is if a process is like flapping, if it keeps restarting itself over and over again, then that would manifest itself in this alert by seeing, however many times it restarted per minute. So if it's restarting 10 times per minute, then I would see, about 10 processes running. And that's where you might use, more than n processes running to detect that kind of scenario. So there's a bunch of ways you can kind of remix this alert, and we try to make it as flexible as possible to sort of preemptively cover any use cases that anyone could come up with regarding number of processes running.
So let me ask maybe this is a stupid question, but so I know especially on Linux hosts, when you look at the processes that are running, sometimes it's a very long string, multiple options, that when it lists out exactly what's running. If I call my Cassandra process something else, will I still see it in this list?
Yeah, so it's up to you to determine how you want to filter on it. So we can detect the full command line optionally. We actually disable that by default for security reasons. Sometimes people have sensitive information in arguments or something like that, but you can turn that on in the agent. And so I could pick, any subset of the command line, and I could say, for example, I don't know if I have any good options that it's going to autocomplete to. I could say, let's see, I'll just pick something. So I could see, contains that string or something like that. So it's pretty flexible. If you have one argument in particular you're looking for, you could filter it only to that. You could use the actual executable name itself without the arguments. That shows up as the command name. So between these 2 options, I figure it can cover most of the scenarios.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm really excited about this feature as a former sysadmin. This is awesome. And then moving on to memory percentage.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a quicker one to explain. It's basically, previously, as you were saying earlier, you could alert on, I want to make sure that I have at least, we'll say, 2 gigabytes of memory available. So I'll get alerted if I have below 2 gigabytes free memory left. But if I have a cluster that has a bunch of different sizes of hosts in it, maybe that doesn't make sense because, not all of them have to have 2 gigabytes. If I have some machines with 16 gigs of RAM and some with 4, I'm probably not looking for the same number. So we get a lot of feedback on that to that effect. And so we added this memory percentage alert, and that allows me to set a relative number. So I can say, maybe it's okay if some servers are bigger than others. I want to know, in any case, when any servers have less than 20% free. I could also add a warning threshold to let me know. Maybe I'll flip this. I'll say I should get a warning if any of them have less than 20% free. And I should get a critical alert that'll actually, for example, page me if any of them have less than 10% free. This one's kind of interesting because it's our first, I would say, derived metric in that, so the agent reports basically the actual raw numbers for all of these other things that you see in this list. Memory free percentage is the first one where we can actually do calculations in NRDB, which is the data store that backs all of the metrics that are shown in infrastructure. And we can kind of on the fly come up with the free percentage for memory. And so we expect to use that same capability elsewhere going forward with other kinds of alerts that people might come up with. But yeah, that's pretty much memory free percentage. Not a whole lot more to say there.
Yeah, that is really cool. So I know we wanted to go ahead and take some time for questions in just a minute, but I just want to say I'm super impressed that we were able to roll these features out because I know it's something that our customers have been asking for. And you guys have been doing an awesome job at getting these things rolled out quickly to address customer concerns. So this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Great.
To deliver it.
So let's go back to the presentation, and I just want to let people know where they can get more information. If you like what you hear and you want to learn more, there are several ways. The first way I always recommend to everybody is, just to join the community. You can go to discuss.newrelic.com, post a question, talk to other users, get information. It's a great place to search if somebody else is actually asked a question. You can do all of those things there. And then also check out the docs. So we have documentation available for host not reporting and process alerting, but I believe the memory percentage is rolled into the other documentation already. So it's in the docs. It just doesn't have a separate document standalone by itself. And then you can also, of course, follow the blog.newrelic.com. That's where we post a lot of interesting information. If you live in this universe of supporting applications and you're on a DevOps team and you want to learn what other customers are doing or what the industry is doing, it's a great place to find out all of that information. And again, if you are new to New Relic Infrastructure, definitely start a free trial, or you can always request a demo as well. We're always happy to get on the phone and get in front of you and actually show you what these features look like to help you learn how you can use them best in your particular environment. And of course, all of this stuff is also available on newrelic.com/infrastructure. So with that, let's go ahead and see if there's any questions out there. I'm going to turn it back over to Jackson.
Hello. Yeah, so we had just a few come in. This first one, I'm not sure if it was answered implicitly with some of the discussion with host not reporting. How often does the host not reporting alert get triggered if a host is constantly rebooting? And is there a way to change that setting?
Yeah, so the minimum threshold being 5 minutes will affect that. I guess if your host goes offline and it takes more than 5 minutes for it to come back, then you'll get an alert for it. If it's going up and down and it takes less time than that to come back, then you won't necessarily see that show up in the UI, or you won't get an alert for it. You may see events for it either way, but because of the kind of the slack that we build in for hosts to temporarily, have a network blip or something like that to not send us data, we don't necessarily see if agents go offline for a very short period of time.
Okay. And sort of related to that, what if I have scheduled downtime or totally decommission a host?
Yeah, so you can use, there's a couple of ways you can control that. You could actually disable the condition temporarily. And then that would allow you to do whatever maintenance you need to do while you have it disabled, and then you can re-enable it once the maintenance is done. New Relic has an ongoing effort to provide maintenance windows within our alerting infrastructure, or within our alerting feature set. And that would allow you in the future to disable alerts for a pre-selected time window while you're doing maintenance, and then it would come back on automatically.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. As someone who used to carry a pager, that is fantastic to hear that we're working on that.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll have more updates on that in the future.
Another question that we have here, can the process running alert help me monitor my containers and be alerted if there's suddenly too many that spin up on a single host?
Yeah, sure. So I'll hop back over to the product actually for a second to show that. So one of the filters we have, you could take this a number of different ways. If I want to know just purely the number of containers running, I can just filter on this contained attribute. And Cassandra doesn't have any containers, but I could filter to contained equals true, which means it's a container. And that would show me the number of containers running on each host. So if I wanted to make sure that there's no more than, say, 20 containers running per host, I could set up an alert like that. And you could also limit it to any of these labels. So for example, we actually had this in our own services. We have a service that uses up a lot of what are called ephemeral ports on the system. And if you had more than one of those running on the same host, it could cause problems because it would exhaust the pool of available ports. And so we could set up an alert to tell us when there's more than one of that particular service running on, or more than one of that container running on any given host.
So getting into the technical nitty-gritty in terms of how free memory is calculated, can you define what free memory means, and does it include the memory used in disk cache, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. So free memory includes cached and buffers, I believe. We only count as used the amount that's actually like in use by the system or by user processes.
So we're not counting swap or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, because that can be freed by the system on an as-needed basis if programs actually need it.
Yeah. Can we track swap?
We don't track. Let me see. I should double check before I actually answer that.
I'm doing my own jump now.
Yeah. So we have swap as absolute numbers. We haven't provided a percentage for it.
Okay.
Yeah, swap is interesting to measure because it's less of a fixed pool of
Right.
available resource.
Right, and it could directly impact an application. If you're starting to swap out, and all of a sudden your application starts slowing down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's cool. Thanks. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Great.
I have one more question here. So it looks like somebody who's already started to use hostnet reporting. They said, I created the hostnet reporting alert using the tag which applies to 6 hosts. Then I took down one of those hosts manually and the alert triggered. I'd like to take that out of the alert condition for the future, but I don't see it in the infrastructure UI. Why is that?
Yeah, so if you want to, so basically once it goes offline and we create the alert, it's kind of the scenario I was going through here. We'll create the violation for it, and then you have the option if you want that, or if you know that host is not going to come back, you can manually close that violation, and that basically removes it from the equation. The alert's never going to watch that host name again until it starts reporting. So as long as it's permanently offline, you don't have to worry about getting future alerts for it.
Cool. Great. I think we're just about done. I just want to thank everybody again for joining. And if there's something you want to see, we're going to be doing a whole series of these as we roll out features. So this isn't the only one. We'll be doing several of them. So stay tuned, watch your email for more invites to more webinars. And if there's something that you want to see, you can actually just reach out to me directly. My email is on the screen. It's anewrelic.com. If you have something you'd like us to demo in a webinar or you have an idea, please reach out to me directly and we'll see if we can set it up. We'd love to do that.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. As a reminder, we'll be sending out a brief survey after the fact. And also, if you wanted to share this with colleagues, we'll have a recording available as well. Thanks, everybody, for your time.